Yeah, we should also. I'm gonna do my best not to curse at all, since these are Disney films. Like,
Fuck that.
Oh,
This is the
no.
internet. If you're afraid of like F words on the internet, you're in the wrong place.
hey, we're two fat guys.
And we just watched Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
That's right. Welcome to our first video of Disney Delight.
Yeah, our first non-com. Well, okay, we did the Star Wars.
Yeah,
It's not our first non-comic book marathon. But
It's the first significant one, though. Star Wars is a one-day commitment. This is
That's true.
significantly more.
yeah, God, Jesus.
We've been wanting.
Why are we doing this again?
Well, we've been wanting to do this for a while. We've wanted because obviously we love Disney. I think it's why we both ended up getting into musical theater.
Because we're people.
Because we're people and we're not completely dead inside, mostly, but there's still a little shred of loving Disney inside. We wanted to do one for a while, but then also, more importantly, I don't know about more importantly, but also importantly, this November is released the next film from Walt Disney Animation Studios is based on our Marvel comic property.
Great. So
by doing this marathon, that film in November is going to be the final installment of, well, at least for now, the final installment of two different marathons until further films come out. So it was an interesting idea. We want to do this for a while, and this is sort of giving us a time frame to approach it. So we do have a while, but we also have a lot of films to watch.
yes. Oh, geez. 60,000-ish?
Yeah, so first I want to talk a little more on why I think we wanted to do Disney in the first place. I think it's no coincidence that we are of the generation that grew up during what's known as the Disney Renaissance. Starting with The Little Mermaid in 1988? 89, that's the one. And then through, depending on who you ask, through the late 90s, early 2000s, that's the period that included Beauty and the Beast, and Aladdin, and Lion King, Tarzan, Hercules, Mulan. It was just an insane period of just these high-quality films that they sort of said. Starting with Little Mermaid, they sort of said, well, what if we made them like Broadway musicals and had some songs and dance numbers?
Yeah, they kind of took back animation from a lot of the offshoot
and it
competition.
And it's not surprising. Like, everyone in our generation loves Disney, and I feel very fortunate to have grown up during that time, and I'm 100% convinced it's why I do musical theater now. I mean, I first wanted to sing by trying to sound like Aladdin and Simba from Lion King. Like, I remember I had the tapes, and
oh man, yeah.
Yeah, that's
it's all coming crashing back.
That's how I tried to learn how to sing, and like the neighborhood kids would make fun of me for trying to sing, but I don't care. I want to sound like Simba because Lion King's friggin' awesome. So that's why I really want to.
It's funny because even as a kid, I was always Pumbaa.
Yes.
I
mean, let's be honest. Yeah, that's fair. Also, my favorite class in college was History of Animation. Now, we only spent, I think, 2 or 3 classes on Disney specifically, because we did all of animation from the beginning of film through today. So there wasn't a whole lot of time focused on everything, but it was just so fascinating, and I love the subject, and I'm a huge pretentious nerd, and...
What?
Well, spoiler alert. So any chance I get to talk about animation and Disney in particular, I wanted to jump at. This marathon is going to work a little differently. We want to talk a bit about how this marathon is going to work.
Yeah.
Now, with the exception of this one, and possibly, and there may be a few other ones, we're going to be doing videos based on groups of films. So we're not going to do one response video per one movie usually.
Because that'd be 60 some odd videos. And
yes, which we've done before, and it's driven us to madness. And at a certain point, as you know, Clayton, we don't have anything to talk about, and we start rambling, and we end up filling way too much time because we're too lazy to edit, and we just put on 15 minutes of us talking about nonsense, and occasionally we mention the title of the film. So we want to avoid that. We want to actually talk about the only, important topics about the film, and then move on.
Yeah, that's all. I just watched our Superman Returns video, where we spend a good, 7 minutes talking about J.K. Simmons and Spider-Man 2.
Well, first off, J.K. Simmons and Spider-Man 2 deserves several videos. So
I know. I'm not saying we were wrong. I'm just saying it happens.
I'm not surprised he wasn't contained to one film. One video, rather. So, yeah, we get off topic, as you know, Clayton. So that's how the marathon's going to work. We're going to have sort of thematically appropriate groups. All the main films are going to be, we're doing every film from Walt Disney Animation Studios. This does not include what's called Disney Toon Studios, which are the ones who are responsible for all the direct-to-DVD sequels, and also some theatrical releases, such as a Goofy movie, DuckTales Legend of the Lamp, and a few others. Sadly, because I do like a few of those, but I'm glad because a lot of those are
I don't want to watch those direct-to-DVD sequels. Except for Cinderella 3.
Yes. What we are also watching is what's called the Associated Productions. It is a thing where, in associated with Walt Disney Animation Studios, is one of the credits that goes on the title. These are things such as, obvious things such as Mary Poppins and Peach Dragon, Bedknobs and Broomsticks. Enchanted. Also things like Roger Rabbit, the Rocketeer is in there.
Really?
Yeah, the Rocketeer's in there.
Got that.
Yeah, there's a whole list of, I think it's like 12 or so associated films.
Yeah, it's not a whole lot.
So we'll be doing those. Those will get their own videos, not each individually usually. Some of them may. Like, I feel like Enchanted, we should probably give it a wait, because that was a particular, like, nostalgic moment for our generation.
Yeah, and because it was about the Disney Renaissance movies.
Yeah, it's a meta commentary on that sort of Princess Disney model. So, but that's how it's going to work. We're going to pick, with the exception of those, we're going to go chronologically. So we're going to watch films starting with Snow White, as we did today, and we're going to work through them in order of release, and then we're going to group them together and talk about them when we feel appropriate. So
the videos may be a little longer, but they will
hopefully have more content.
Yeah, they'll be more content, a little less rambling. We'll try to do them a little bit more structured.
Yeah. So before we get to the actual film, I want to talk a little about film and animation before Snow White. Now, animation started as soon as, if not earlier than film did. You know, in the late 1800s, people were animating. They were, trying to bring drawings to life, doing simple things such as silhouettes. Surprisingly quickly, people got to mixing live action with animation and doing sort of gimmick things like that. There's Gertie the Dinosaur, which is one of the most popular touring shows, where he would tour around with the film, and essentially he had a script and he would go along, and it seemed as if the animated dinosaur was reacting to his calls. He would toss it food and so forth, and at the end he would like step behind the screen, and then the little cartoon man would step on the dinosaur. There were also a lot of fun things. I remember one short, there was a man drawing on a chalkboard, and the chalk face would like keep changing and get angry, and he would like blow it away. A lot of fun things like that. Even Disney himself, before Mickey and all that, there was a popular series of Alice in Animation Land. It was something, it's not Alice in Wonderland, but it's something along those lines, where there's a little girl named Alice, and she was live action against an entirely animated background. So even back then, they were doing crazy stuff like that. But also important to the development of animation is the experimental animation that was going up in Canada, which we're going to talk a lot more about when we get to Dumbo. Because it's actually very important.
I don't know anything about this. So.
It's the most evident. Essentially, Canada had publicly funded arts, like film. The government was just giving them money. Say, hey, you know what? Go create art. Art is important. We want you to, and they funded it.
Thanks, Canada.
Yeah, thanks, Canada. And we wouldn't have a lot of animation today. I mean, it might have eventually gotten there, but a lot of innovations were made through there that lead directly to sort of traditional animation and things that people realize they can do. Things like Day and Night. You gotta think of that short from Pixar. Yeah. That's really cerebral and abstract, and that's what all their stuff were. I mean, I'm talking about they had animations of sort of just wax shapes changing and all these really out there stuff that people build upon and led to more traditional animation. Now, Walt Disney, as a lot of people know, he was an animator. He had a character called Oswald the Lucky Rabbit, who was sort of his earliest hits. It's an anthropomorphic animal, go around, have wacky adventures. And he actually went to ask for a raise because he wasn't getting enough money off of these shorts. And his bosses decided, you know what, we have the rights to this character, we don't need you anymore. So they fired him. And on the train ride back, he was in a panic, thinking he was done for. And that's when he hurried up and sketched and had the idea for Mickey the Mouse. It just came to him, and he's like, it's simple, geometric, we could try to do this. So him and his friend Al Works started working on those shorts, and Steamboat Willie was the first one that came out. Now, fun fact, Steamboat Willie was actually not super well received. Before, it wasn't released wide, but like by the people who saw it, the critics, the behind-the-scenes people, they realized it was kind of good, but it wasn't that great. What happened was it had no sound. So that's actually, the Steamboat Willie came along like right as sound film was becoming a thing, where they could actually have soundtracks that played, not live orchestras. And that's what made Disney so amazing. It was his innovation. So he actually realized this. He grabbed on the sound. The second Mickey short, which name escapes me, it's him on a farm. I remember that, which a lot of Mickey shorts are him on a farm. But it's him on a farm, and they had a soundtrack, and he planned out a lot of these bits with like, okay, this is going to sound like a bell, and this is going to make this noise. And they had music hits and sound effects cued, and he made it, and it was a revelation. And it like caught everyone who watched it on fire, and they loved it. So then he went back.
God, it caught them on fire.
Yes, it caught them on fire, and then he was promptly jailed, and he never made a film again. But his brother Roy, no. So then he went back and actually they added a soundtrack to Steamboat Willie, which was then theatrically released, and the rest is history. Mickey Mouse became one of the internationally most famous characters. People loved it. Like, he's putting shorts and shorts and shorts out. But he soon became obsessed with the idea of doing a live, full-length animated film. A feature-length, traditionally animated film. Now, there have been some other animated films that were feature-length. Prince Ahmed was one of them. It was a silhouette film with sort of like characters on silhouette, like Abed and Troy would do behind a blanket. But yeah, Disney started working on the idea for Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs in 1934, and he worked on it for almost 4.5 years, I believe, before it was completed. And yeah, we just watched this featurette on it. They completed it about 2.5 weeks before the premiere. It was down to the wire. He was obsessed with perfecting this thing. He spent so much time on individual bits, and he would just give out bonuses for like pitching good jokes to animators, and just demanded the best that everybody had and worked to the bone.
But like in a supportive way.
It wasn't
reports is like the kind of environment where it promoted growth through either just rewards or just collaborations, and like the freedom to experiment and make yourself better and study and continual education in your field.
It was also, this was during the Great Depression, which was a huge factor to it, because if you're graduating from college with a degree in the arts, or if you have a traditional training in animation...
You thought being an artist now was hard.
People are standing in line to get potatoes to eat for the week. Like, it was insanely bad conditions. And Walt Disney was the one guy who's like, you know what, I need everyone I can. I'm doing this insane thing. And so they would go there, and they all were just physically hungry to learn. Like, not to be mean, weird like that, but they were just desired to learn and be better, and he pushed people, and they reworked bits, and it was this huge collaborative effort. It reminds me a lot of, just because I know a lot about sort of how Pixar came to being, it reminds me a lot of that. It was a lot of people like...
Yeah, just that call to arms.
Like, it's call to arms, these guys who had these skills, and like no one knew if it was going to work, and like if this fails, we're bankrupt. And just by the skin of their teeth, they got it done, and it just blew up everything. Hollywood went insane. People went nuts for it. It toured across the country for years and years and years, and just made an infinite amount of money.
Well, so like I know very little, and I'm going to be kind of learning along with this marathon about the history of Walt Disney himself. But I did know a lot about like John Lasseter, and like now seeing these featurettes, these things about Walt Disney, I'm now realizing how similar their stories are, which is amazing.
Yeah, it's that he was underappreciated. He wanted to push the bounds of sort of what they were doing. The powers that be just wanted to keep chugging along with what worked before. He got sort of bounced around, found a few investors who believed in him, and just put it all behind one great idea and made it happen.
Yeah, the kind of personality where not only can you dream big, but also just that drive for execution.
Because there are a lot of great creative people, but it's hard to have that and then also have just the detail-oriented, like, I'm going to get this done, and...
I mean, we don't even get these videos put out on time.
We don't. I mean, and they made a friggin' animated film back in the Great Depression. It was insane. But Disney, he was also just the best at what he did. I don't know if he invented, but he certainly perfected the multi-plane camera. Which I don't know if you even know what that is.
I didn't. Yeah, I heard you guys mentioning that the other day.
Essentially, what the multiplane camera is, the idea is like, let's say I draw a picture of like a cottage and the moon and like some trees in the foreground. If that were real life and I was walking towards it, well, the trees would get bigger faster, and then the house and then the moon would get bigger slower.
Those basically like layered cells.
Yeah, so the idea is that the cells are going to be on these different layers, and he had this insane one. There was a quick shot of it. I don't know if you noticed. It was like 20-some feet tall, had like 12 planes, which was an insane application of this idea.
I probably saw it and probably didn't realize what it was.
And yeah, so it's this giant technical thing just to get these shots, and yeah, so it's just set up and it's mechanically, they move at different rates, so that way it moves naturally with these camera movements, and it's an insane technical achievement. And yeah, so he was a huge champion of using that to really just turn animation to be like any other film. There were camera moves.
I guess I never even really thought about the fact that they're actually using a camera to take pictures of
the cells.
You
draw the cells and then you show them on the screen.
Yeah, you draw them and you put them in order, and
it's a flip book.
Yeah, like I mean, obviously I knew that's not how it worked, but I never even thought about that process. Yeah, that's insane.
Yeah, that was a huge step towards it, just because he thought that an animated film was a film. Like, yeah, it's animated, but it wasn't a gimmick to him. It's what it was. There were things that animation allowed you to do that live filmmaking didn't do, but it still had to do all those things that live filmmaking did. And Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, for however you may view it now, is still a massive achievement.
Absolutely.
It's still very impressive. The animation holds up very well to scrutiny, especially we watched the Blu-ray edition, which was just gorgeous. I know I'm sure. I know it's been like, the film and all that's been cleaned up and whatnot, but it was just a gorgeous viewing. The biggest thing I want to talk about with the actual film Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs is sort of how it does hold up to a modern audience. I think I found, now being someone from the future, the like biggest issue with it is it's not as narratively strong as eventually Disney films.
This isn't Toy Story.
To be fair, though, films of that time weren't as narratively strong as they are now. But the bits in this film are funny.
Oh yeah, well, because especially coming from we do shorts, they knew how to really isolate those moments and make them play.
It's because they do everything individually in the film very well. It's just sort of a structure issue. It's like, because there's the opening. Okay, we introduce the princess, and like, here's the danger. She's in the woods, and then we get to the dwarves. And like, all right, now we're going to spend the next 40 minutes of our film with these couple sequence of different bits. And the bits are funny. The dwarves are great. Oh, yeah. The animation is sharp. It's exactly what you'd want. Funny. It's them being scared of her sleeping in the bed and them washing up. There were a couple sequences that get cut out. There was one of them building her a bed of her own. I think there's one where they're eating the soup and they keep being ridiculous on it. And then them doing the silly song where they're dancing for her. It's just these funny, great bits that don't really move any of the storyline other than the dwarves accept her.
For me, as much as I love the animation on the dwarves, what was really amazing to me on this film was the animals. Just all of the animation with them, because each animal moved differently. It had its own personality. And not only that, there were things that I don't even see in some modern animation now. Things like the Disney movies and Pixar movies are really good about this, but like, there was one bit where they were doing laundry, and Snow White, like, threw a shirt on this deer that had, like, antlers and a whole bunch of other, like, clothes and stuff on it, and, like, it landed, and, like, the deer tried to, like, knock it off its face just by shaking its head, and it, like, fell and almost didn't, and it took another, like, second to knock things off, which just, from an animation perspective, like, that was amazing, because it was those kind of bits that you'd see if this were actually happening. Like, just like something not quite working, that having those flaws, it wasn't, oh, I'm going to toss this over to you, and oh, I'm going to catch it, and we're going to go along our way. Like, it made it grounded. It gave it that personality, that the idea that this is something that is happening, that really sells animation. And to see something like that done so early in the history of animation is amazing, and also kind of sets that bar super high for everything going forward. And now all those off-brand direct-to-DVD animated studios that just put crap out. Like, you want to just punch them in the face? Yeah, I'm like, come on!
Like, you know what they had to go through to get this, and now you can achieve these things so easily, and you don't. I'm not surprised you said that, because as you know, most of Disney's characters were animals. So
yeah,
they did do a great job of it, but I'm not surprised they nailed the animals. They had that, and I'm sure that's why they decided to have her interact with animals so much early on. Is because
this is what we know. Yeah,
all right, we're comfortable, we're safe. This part's going to be good. Now the dwarves were human, but they were exaggerated human. They had sort of bulbous shapes. There was a lot of particular care given to the very human characters, the Snow White and the prince, and when she's not a hag, the evil queen. And they didn't rotoscope, but they did do live action references. They did have people they did film a lot of stuff so they can get, like, okay, here's how the human anatomy moves, and they took a lot of very careful study of that to get it. And they did, by and large, a very good job. There is some issues with the very fine details in the face. Her nose disappears, her lips are a little small. But for at the time, it's astounding.
Yeah, it's like, drawing a human for 90 minutes, it sucks. I'm like...
Like, if I watched the first Toy Story, I'm like, man, those toys look great. Like, the people sometimes look a little weird. Like, maybe people don't quite look like that.
Yeah. Also, humans are difficult.
Humans are difficult. We're all weird and lumpy and hard to do. But they did a surprisingly good job on that. And I think it was a great idea to have, okay, we have 2.5 human characters, and, like, they're just straight, plain, human-looking people.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have a bunch of these funny-looking, humanish people, and then a bunch of animals. It was just, they knew what their strengths were, they knew what they could accomplish, and that's the thing. It seems an impossible task, but Disney knew what he could accomplish, and he accomplished it. Granted, he went like quadruple or quintuple budget.
Yes.
He originally pitched it to be like $250,000, ended up costing over $1 million. Over $1 million during the Great Depression.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I was like, I don't know the conversion on that, but I believe
it's an obscene amount of money.
A metric fuck ton, roughly.
Yeah, it is a lot of money. Fortunately, this film made a lot of money, and because of it, he built the studio, which I believe is still used today. Like up the road from where they used to, he bought like a huge plot of land. Like, all right, we're gonna have this huge campus. We're gonna have room for all our animators. We're gonna have tons of people, and we're just gonna churn out movies. And that's what he did. And that's what I'm looking forward to coming up. Now, the next specific film we have is Pinocchio. That is the second feature-length film that he did. Mm-hmm. But we have a lot of classics coming up in the next bunch, including Fantasia, Dumbo, Bambi are all in this group. It's gonna be interesting for me to see, because I mean, some of these I haven't seen in years and years.
I think what's going to be interesting for me about this marathon is seeing where all these movies fell chronologically in time, because as far as young Disney watching me was, all of these movies came out in 1993. Like, every single one.
That's fair. Like,
Fantasia, 1993.
Yeah, I knew, like, Fantasia.
Dumbo, 1993.
Yeah, I knew, like, Cinderella and Snow White and Sleeping Beauty all came, like, before me.
Yeah,
so
they were older, but
they must have been, like, early 80s or something, like, before I was born.
Some crazy time, like 1982.
And those films are sometimes 20 years apart from each other, and it's going to be insane to watch. I'm really looking forward to watching the evolution of Disney style and how they become along as a studio.
Yeah, I was shocked when we looked at this list and Pinocchio was the second one. Mm-hmm. I had no idea. It's
also going to be interesting to study sort of if the sort of rumors of Disney's demise were exaggerated after the Renaissance. It's going to be good to sort of go through the different eras and see sort of how they developed as a studio and what trends they fell victim to and what trends they started. And
especially when we're watching those isolated, like not with their competitors.
Yeah, because I'm not watching this next to Shrek 80s, or something.
Yeah, and we're not watching the Pixar stuff later. It'll be real interesting to see how a lot of these do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but Snow White and Seven Dwarfs, even today, is a major achievement. It was very entertaining. Now, the singing voices aren't the best that you'll get out of Disney, which we had some discussion with our...
watching with a couple of our female friends, and they were just like literally cringing at
Snow White's voice.
The high, warbly Snow White voice, which I thought was hilarious.
And like I said, it's not perfect. It has some plot issues, some uncanniness on the humans, but it is
the sort of thing. But as you said, it's issues as we're watching it now.
And that's the thing. Like, we're coming from always having animation. Like, audiences saw this, and the world had changed. Like, they walked in the theater, and 90 minutes later, nothing was the same because of what they just watched. It was a whole new world, and it's awesome. It's great to watch it.
Yeah.
It's the first feature-length, traditionally animated film, and it was great, and I'm looking forward to doing the rest of this marathon.
Yeah, so it'll be a while before we get around to the next videos. These videos will be a little further apart, but we will get to them. Mm-hmm. And so, we got a handful coming up. But,
so if you have anything you want to have us talk about, Clayton, just let us know.
Put it in the comments, and we'll ignore those.
Or don't put it in the comments. Just shout it real loud. Just sit in your computer and shout. We'll hear.
Just wish upon a star.
Don't do that. Stars are expensive. We can afford stars.
Then don't do that.
We can afford weather balloons. Wish upon a weather balloon. So, we'll see you next time for Disney Delights, Episode 2.
Bye.
Bye.
Goodbye. Goodbye. Ha ha. We can't legally do that.
Ho ho.
Oh ho ho. No, we can't. We're not actually allowed to say the titles or do any voices or talk about these films.